Hello and welcome once again to the Flourish Podcast. This is episode 2 of our first series, and we're excited to be with you. Um, this is a space to explore healthy, holistic, and reflective children's and youth ministry in a way that enables flourishing, both for children and young people, and also for us as practitioners, whether we're volunteers or paid staff. So let's dive right in with who I'm here with. I'm here with Lisa. And we're going to be exploring. My name's Ali, and we're going to be exploring together today the Flourish model. Lisa, do you want to tell us a little bit about how the Flourish model came about? How did you come up with it? Why did you think this is needed? Yeah, just let's start there.
Great. Sorry, I just had a little flash moment too. If I were to become a teacher, that would be the voice he would use. Lisa, can you tell me?
Yes, it
Sorry,
would.
that was why I was.
Carry
Hi.
on.
Yeah, so basically, the Flourish model is something that I've created through the work that I do at Wonderful Me. Um, it kind of came out of as the Wonderful Me journey unfolded. I noticed that a lot of kind of requests that I was getting, or I don't know, approaches for support, were kind of based around we have got this situation. Do you have a strategy, or have you got a resource that will fix this? And just that kind of quite top level, almost firefighty responses, which, like no judgment, that's totally understandable. And I think for lots of us, there has been a significant shift. I've talked before about how, the role that I think COVID has played in that. To this point where I think children's and youth ministry quite often perhaps doesn't look the way it always has done. And I think lots of us in that space are reeling a little bit and trying to work out what to do. We've kind of, for some people, we've been in it, a long time, and all of a sudden for it to feel like it's quite different, it is really tricky. So I think that kind of response, that kind of firefighting response, comes from that space of being a little bit overwhelmed, and we are fighting fires. But actually, if we want to create safe spaces, and kind of bring an opportunity for flourishing, we kind of at some point need to bring ourselves or remove ourselves from that firefighty approach and kind of look at in a more holistic way the way that we're approaching ministry. Does that? I feel like that sounded really judgmental, and that's totally not what I mean.
No, it's. I guess it's the difference between having space to be proactive as opposed to a kind of byproduct of COVID that we're still living with is being reactive.
Yeah,
Um, and when we're in that space of being reactive, we don't necessarily think about the whole picture. And I think what I like about the Flourish model, which you're going to tell us about, is it does create that whole picture for us to look at as we understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
yeah, yeah. Hopefully that's what it does.
Yeah, I think that's what it does. That's why we're talking about it. So dive
So,
let's dive into explain it to us. How does it hang together? What does it look like?
so basically, it's called the Flourish model because it is based around a kind of visual of a flower. So the kind of idea behind it is all of that lovely strategy stuff, resource stuff, like that's all still really important. So I'm totally not saying that doesn't matter. But in some ways, that's kind of like the flower head, the bit that looks really cool and pretty, the bit that's eye-catching. Um, and I think for lots of us, we want to jump straight in there. So I always use, when I'm talking about this, I use the analogy of decorating a room. So Al and I are married, just to be clear,
Each other.
and to each other. So I quite like the idea of decorating, but I don't so much love. You're shaking your head because actually I think you don't love the idea or the process. You just don't love it, full stop. I get bored quite easily, and a little bit of a change always helps. So I quite like jumping straight in. But when I do that, I want results and I want them really quickly. So effectively, what I want is the paint slapped on the walls that's going to make the room look a little bit different. And the bit that's really like tedious and I just have no energy for is all the prep and the kind of painting of the woodwork and but all of that stuff, all of the prep, all of the boring stuff is the stuff that really kind of means that what you do is a really good job and it brings it all together. So the kind in the flourish model, the what, the kind of strategies and the resources, that's all kind of the what, or it's the color on the walls at the end of the job. But actually, if we want to do it well, we've got to backtrack and we've got to do all the prep. So in our flower, for a flower to be healthy and to grow well, it needs roots and it needs a stem. So in the flourish model, our roots are thinking about our why. So why are we doing what we're doing? And the stem, why are you laughing?
Because I can link that to decorating, because I step into a room like, why are we decorating the room? Why? Sorry, carry on.
That's very true. So yeah, so the roots are the why, thanks for that. And then the stem is the how. And it's the approach that we bring. And both of those are super important. Like if we don't have a flower that doesn't have roots, really falls over and it isn't sustained and it isn't nourished. In fact, we were just thinking about this episode and I was reminded of a story that I read recently of I couldn't quite remember the story. So in prepping for this podcast episode, I did a quick Google search for bubble garden and felt thoroughly corrected by AI Google, who was like, I think the experiment you were looking for is not bubble garden, but is in fact called Biosphere 2, apparently is what it's called. So, and I haven't actually explained this to you, Al. So basically, there was an experiment that was done in Arizona in like the late 80s. And what they were trying to create was, or explore was, is life sustainable in a kind of domed pod? I don't really know why. I guess, I don't know, maybe they're exploring life on Mars. Can we live in pods? I don't know. Anyway, this is what they were doing. They did this big experiment.
Let's
Um,
not speculate. Just explain why you're using the
so
story.
can we create a completely enclosed kind of artificial environment in a glass dome? And so they filled it with plant life and all kinds of things, lots of trees, and it had all of the perfect conditions. So everything had the right light that it needed. It was, thoroughly watered, all of the right nutrients. Sorry, I can't see through my glasses. All of the right nutrients were given to each plant and tree and life form. Sorry, now I'm back on Mars. But and basically, what happened was everything seemed to look good. Things seemed to look like they were thriving, and the trees particularly like grew quite quickly. But then what happened was they all just kept falling down. Like the trees would grow really quickly and look like they were healthy, but then they would all fall down. And basically, what they discovered in that experiment was that there wasn't any wind, which seems like not that important, but actually for trees growing, what they discovered was that kind of wind and the breeze that comes means that what the tree has to do is kind of really anchor really, really deeply. And so it's the response to the wind that means their tree roots grow deeply and firmly, and they're firmly planted. So without wind, the trees just fell down because their roots weren't firmly rooted. So it's a really good, I quite like using that story when we're talking about stress and anxiety and the difference between kind of healthy stress that helps us grow in a safe way and kind of overwhelm. Anyway, I'm going on a sidetrack now. But basically, if a plant doesn't have roots, it falls over. And if we don't root what we're doing really firmly in why we are doing it, if we don't fully grasp that and we don't claim it, we don't explore it, then we're just not going to be rooted in the approach and the ministry that we bring.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
I think so. It's like there's something missing, that if we don't pay attention to all of the whole things, holistically thinking about the work that we're doing, there are things we can miss, as simple as the wind isn't there. for those trees. So I think taking the time, and the Flourish model helps you notice, what is it you've got, what is it you're trying to do, all the different aspects of that are built into the Flourish model. So if you were
Yeah.
to unpack it a little bit, what are the different elements? You've mentioned flower, but how does everything connect, and what do the different things mean?
Yeah, so basically it's why and how and what. So the roots are our why in the kind of flower. Why are we doing what we're doing? Are we really unpacking that? Do we have kind of strong vision, values? Do we feel that we were called to do things? What does that calling look like? That kind of thing. And then the stem of the flower is our how, our approach. And for me, I guess this has been the noticing that I've brought to kind of when people are coming struggling. And they kind of seemingly have got all of the things that are in place. But often what we don't do with our teams particularly is articulate our how. So we can really know that we're doing something because we feel called to journey with struggling children, or because we feel really convinced that we really want to convey and help children explore the love of Jesus and be rooted in their Bible knowledge, that kind of thing. Whatever it is, we can have our why. We can then bring really good programs and really good strategies. But then if we don't then articulate with our volunteers how we want to go about doing that, it can all fall apart, and which exactly is what happens when a flower doesn't have a stem. We've just got this kind of flower head on the floor. It doesn't have structure and it doesn't hold up. And your how, we'll unpack it. We're going to do a week on each part of the model over the next few weeks, and we'll really dig into the importance of the how when we do that. But it really gives a structure, and it means that your team are on board and we're all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet and know where we're going. And then the flower, the pretty bit, the bit that everyone likes, is then your good strategies and your good resources and kind of what a space looks like and that kind of thing. So yeah, so it's called Flourish because it's a flower, but we're thinking about our why, our how, and our what, not just jumping ahead and straight away looking at the what.
Yeah. And I think sometimes people change the activities they do, but get the same results. And they're trying to change the activities because they think maybe if we do something different, this will work or that will work. And what they haven't done is think through their how and their approach. So sometimes I've worked with people where when they start to think, starting with the roots, that kind of vision, values, vocational kind of, are we called to this? And then they start looking at their approach. They realize the team's all in a different place. Everybody's doing it for different reasons, different motivations. There isn't consistency in working with the kids in a particular way. So you've
Mm.
got some team that are being quite harsh, other team are being so generous. It's almost like you can do whatever you like here. And for kids, that's really confusing. But you haven't thought through whether you're actually approaching the way you're doing your work in the same way, or whether everybody's actually bringing their own stuff to it. And that's just not been thought through as a team. So it doesn't matter what activity you run, if that's where you all are, you'll get the same results again, like the madness thing. Do the same thing again and expect something different to happen.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So yeah, so that is Flourish really. That is the Flourish model. It's kind of just a way of unpacking and separating out the different bits and really thinking through each one. So we spend a lot of time just really exploring our why, our vision, our values. And when we look at that next week, we'll really unpack that. Al and I, we've spent quite a bit of time recently, haven't we, just really exploring our values and what's important to us. And I have found that so helpful. I've been involved in children's ministry in different ways for a very long time. But kind of really nailing down some language that kind of really explores what am I about? What is it that I'm passionate about? Um, has just been so helpful. And it is then also helpful to work out when something isn't going right. If we bring it back to our values, often that really kind of shines a bit of a light and helps you identify what it is that's not going right. And I think our values really feed into both the why and the how, they really are shaped by the values that we bring. And I think it's so worth taking a little bit of time to really unpack and explore what your values are,
Mm.
and really think it through.
I think sometimes as well, you can even feel like things are going well on the surface, but you feel uncomfortable and you lack peace. And I think that's worth exploring. And just, are you delivering somebody else's vision, or is it something that you really own for yourself? And unless you do the work around your own vision, values, and sense of vocational call, you don't bring your whole self to a piece of work or what you're doing. And then I think there can be a disconnect. And then we end up just doing a job,
Mm.
rather than something that maybe we love and we put everything into it because it lives for us when we do it. And actually, children can pick up on that, whether we're going through the motions with something because we're tired or we haven't thought everything through, whether actually it feels like it's just everything's there as it should be because we've done the work, that which is as much about the personal work in terms of why am I doing this and this, that kind of stuff that we explored last week. And what we're now looking at in terms of this model is a way of building on that why into something that gives you structure and a holistic picture of ministry, not just the activities and the things you might be doing.
And I guess as we've journeyed it, I kind of created this model because, I felt like it was important that we had a structure and a way to kind of explore the different elements and recognize that all the different elements are really important and they play out. But I guess my learning over the last few months really has just been actually how that model really works in so many different ways. So it can work in a quite top level way, like as we look at creating safe space, building ministry, what's the why, what's the how, what's the what. But actually it works in kind of more like micro spaces. So Al and I this week, we are heading, because we're filming this in a bit in advance, before we launch in January. So in a couple of weeks, we are heading off to the National Youth Ministry Weekend, and we're leading a seminar for that on intergenerational youth ministry, aren't we? And so we
Which will
sat
have
yesterday.
delivered by the time you're watching this.
Real. It's a bit of a weird time thing. Anyway, we sat yesterday and had a bit of a planning meeting because we're leading this session, and we kind of brainstormed together, what's all the stuff that's on our heart with that, and what are the kind of things that we could mention. But just couldn't make it work as a session, could we? We sat with this sheet with all of this stuff that we could include, and we were like, but how does it hold together? And then we just kind of had a little bit of we haven't really thought about the why of this. We've got a load of what on the page, but we haven't really explored the why of intergen ministry. And actually, when we kind of broke it down into why, how, and what, all of a sudden this session came together. So it's a really helpful tool, in lots of different spaces to kind of help you unpack
And I
what's.
think that the challenge, though, to kind of do that on a regular basis and keep reviewing it and reflecting on it. So flowers continue to grow. They don't sit there as kind of things in a glass or a
Mm.
dome, as you started with. Um, they need their wind. But in terms of thinking about flowers growing, it's like they're not static things. There is growth happening. So I think if we don't keep reflecting and coming back to our model, and thinking about those different aspects, we can miss something. But I think in lots of ways, we're pressured, particularly if we're line managed, to kind of what are you doing is the question that gets asked in a line management meeting or just in with
Yeah.
that. The church is asking, what are you doing? We're employing you. What are you doing? Rather than, sitting back and allowing you space to think why, and continue to reflect on that. The why might be different 3 years in terms of the kind of vision of the church and where things are at. And so actually you need to explore that in a different way. But it's
Sorry, I'm not interrupting you. I'm like having a little bit of a light bulb. Well, because I
go
was
on.
thinking, in a church that we have worked at in the past, there was a sense sometimes of a bit of a disconnect, like we're just not on the same page. And I guess the kind of leadership questions were very much, it was kind of quite numbers focused, but it was all the what. And I think the whole time we were there, it just felt like we weren't quite in the same space, but it was really difficult to identify that.
Mm.
So to know that there's a bit of a rub, but when you can't identify where that's coming from, it's really difficult to do anything about it. But actually, just reflecting on that now as you're talking, I think the rub in that space was that our why of what we were doing, why we felt youth ministry was there, what it was there for, and how we were going to go about it was probably quite different from the why and the how that potentially at times church leadership had in their mind.
Mm.
Um, and so for us, we were all about we're going to build relationship. It's kind of we're going to cheer on and kind of journey well and do really deep discipleship. So no, there might not be 200 people in the room, but with the 20 or 30 that are there, we're going to go deep and we're going to journey well. Whereas for other people, it was all like the measure of success. The what was, are there 200 people in the room? So it is it's a helpful way of kind of identifying when there is a rub, like where is the rub? And often it's with the why or the how, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah,
But actually what we talk about is the what. We think the what's are different, but actually it's the why and the how.
yeah. I mean, I would say often to people, you can change up the activities. The activity is not the thing. It's hold lightly to the activities because what works now, and if you think about COVID as an example, some of what we were doing pre-COVID, we can't do that now. It just doesn't work in the same way. We've got to rethink our approach. So, and that's the thing, it's not the activity itself, it's our approach to what we're doing. So you might still run a program that's an hour and a half like you did pre-COVID, but actually approach needs to look completely different. So if we're not thinking that through, if we're not using a model like Flourish, we might miss that and just be focused on the what. Oh, this what isn't working, so let's do some more whats
Mm.
and
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
hit on something.
And we're such human doers rather than human beings, aren't we? So we're always, if there's a problem, it's always because we need to do something more, which it rarely is the case. But yeah, yeah, completely. So yeah, so that's the Flourish model. I am slightly annoyed because since creating the Flourish model, I have come across the work of Simon Sinek, who was not on my radar at all before creating this model. And so I was really chuffed that I'd come up with the Flourish model with the why, the how, and the what. Only to discover Simon Sinek, who is incredibly famous and has been doing this for a lot longer, has this model that looks about the importance of your why and your how and your what. So, slightly annoying, but but also I'm just going to choose to be encouraged by it. Like clearly he didn't nick it from me, because he's been going away a lot longer. But I'm going to be encouraged that, good stuff, we're on the same wavelength. But if you are interested in that kind of concept and want to do a bit more reading in a different way, then yeah, I recommend some of the stuff that Simon Sinek has done. You can Google him and there's some good YouTube videos
Yeah.
and dig into the why, the how, the what.
I once did something, this is off piste slightly, but I'm just going to throw it in there. I once did something with acetates years and years ago,
Oh my
based
days, you've
on,
just totally dated
no,
yourself.
no, based on John 15.
But
So,
sorry, for anyone who is a little bit younger than us, acetates,
yeah, yeah.
when you have to explain what a cassette tape is, acetates were clear plastic sheets that went on what was called an OHP, an overhead projector. When I started teaching, it was all about OHPs, overhead projectors and acetates.
That's how long ago
But
that
yeah,
was.
you drew on the clear sheet and then the image of it was projected onto the wall.
So anyway, very quickly, I did a thing that was basically looking at John 15, and there's bits where Jesus is saying, I'm in you, and you're in me, and I'm in the Father. And I drew this as a picture on different sheets of acetate and then put them over one another. So just to demonstrate to people how close we are to God, because we're enveloped with his love and his presence. And then some dude called Louis Giglio was speaking at conferences and he did it with Tupperware and it went like viral and crazy. And I'm like, I did that with acetates, mate. You've nicked it. Except I don't think he ever came to our church and saw me do it because this was pre-streaming anything. So yeah, there you go.
It's a good reminder we don't own stuff. Like
We don't own
all
anything.
good things are God things. So so
And
it's
there's nothing any of us thought about that hasn't been thought about by somebody else.
no, it's a nice reminder that what we're doing is hopefully inspired by God. All the good stuff is anyway. So yeah, brilliant. So Al, we are trying to finish each podcast episode with a little bit of a takeaway, something to mull over for the rest of the week until the next episode drops next week.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's your little takeaway thought for the week for us?
I think my takeaway would be if you if you don't think about the stuff that can't be seen, so if you think about roots, they're not visible,
Mm.
but they're things that really need paying attention to. And you can liken that to prayer, what we do in the secret place when we're praying and meeting with Jesus, but also just our prep, the way we kind of prepare for things. And part of, for me, the kind of thinking about our vision, our values, our vocational call is part of our preparation for being in ministry. And sometimes we can find ourselves doing ministry and we haven't done that work. And it's not the stuff that's seen in terms of activities, but it's so vital if we want our activities to be things that are going to help people flourish. So do the unseen stuff, do the stuff that isn't glamorous. As Lisa said, this, we all look at the flower and think, look at that beautiful flower. But it's being held up by all the work that's going on underground.
Yeah, it's good. So true, and a really good reminder. Oh, thanks. So yeah, next week we are gonna look at the roots in a bit more detail. We're gonna start to unpack the why as we explore how we identify that. What does it mean? We're gonna dig into some values work. Yeah, see where we go. So thanks for joining us. Tune in next week, and if you are enjoying it, don't forget to share with your youth ministry mates. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, like and subscribe wherever you might get your podcasts
Or
from,
don't, just enjoy it. We hope
and
you have
do
that.
comment. And maybe as we get going, we'll have the opportunity to kind of do a feedback or comment section, or kind of reflect on something with you if you do like it and you want to comment. Of course, if you
Sound
don't, we never
technical.
mention this again. It's because nobody's commented and nobody's watching, but that's okay as well. We've loved making it. So see you next time.
All right then, bye.
Bye.